Cô hãy cầm số tiền này và rời xa con trai tôi.
Con yêu anh ấy thật lòng.
Hello, dear viewers. Today we bring you an emotional story about a love that rises above the barriers of wealth and status between CEO Quan and a poor orphan girl, Tieu Lac. When Quan's parents discover that he is in love with a girl from such a humble background, they strongly oppose the relationship. Not only do they try to stop their son, but they also go directly to her farm, bringing 500 million VND and demanding that she leave Quan. Faced with an amount of money that could completely change her life, this small yet courageous girl makes a choice that not everyone would dare to make. She refuses. Tieu Lac does not choose money. She does not choose an easy life. She chooses to stay because her love is sincere. She firmly says that if one day Quan no longer loves her, she will walk away on her own, but she will never sell her heart for pressure or material comfort. Her strength and self-respect make this story deeply touching and unforgettable. Will their love be strong enough to overcome family opposition and social differences? What challenges are waiting for them ahead? If you enjoy emotional, heartfelt, and dramatic love stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next episodes. Your support is our greatest motivation to continue bringing you meaningful and inspiring stories. The news struck the luxurious mansion of CEO Quan's family like a sudden winter storm. For years, his parents had carefully planned every step of their only son's future: the elite education abroad, the carefully selected business partners, the polished social circles filled with heirs and heiresses from equally powerful families. In their eyes, Quan was not only their son, but the future pillar of the corporation, the man who would carry the family name higher than ever before. So when they discovered that he was in love with Tieu Lac, a poor orphan girl who had grown up on a modest countryside farm, disbelief quickly turned into outrage. To them, the difference between the two worlds was painfully obvious. Quan lived among skyscrapers, boardrooms, and million-dollar contracts. Tieu Lac lived among vegetable fields, wooden fences, and the scent of soil after the rain. She had no prestigious surname, no influential relatives, no financial background to strengthen alliances. In their harsh judgment, she simply did not fit. Love, in their experience, was never just about feelings. It was strategy, status, and mutual benefit. And Tieu Lac offered none of those. What troubled them even more was learning that Quan had quietly hired people to search for Tieu Lac's biological parents. He had spent time, money, and effort trying to uncover her origins, hoping to give her answers about her past, perhaps even hoping to prove that she came from a respectable family. To his parents, this was proof of how deeply entangled he had become. They interpreted his actions as desperate attempts to elevate her background, as if trying to reshape reality to justify his feelings. It was something they could neither accept nor tolerate. The confrontation at home was inevitable. For the first time in his life, Quan did not remain silent before his parents' authority. He stood firm in the grand living room, beneath crystal chandeliers and ancestral portraits, and declared calmly but firmly that he loved Tieu Lac for who she was, not for her past, not for her family name, and certainly not for any advantage she could bring him. He spoke about her kindness, her resilience, and the quiet strength she carried despite growing up without parents. He spoke about how she worked tirelessly on her farm, how she cared for every plant as if it were family, and how her laughter made him forget the cold calculations of the corporate world. His words only deepened their concern. To them, love had clouded his judgment. They warned him about public opinion, about shareholders questioning his decisions, about competitors using his inappropriate relationship to damage the company's image. They reminded him of his responsibilities, of the sacrifices made for his success. But Quan did not retreat. He calmly replied that a man who could not protect the woman he loved would never be strong enough to lead a company. That was the moment his parents realized this was not a passing infatuation. Their son, once obedient and rational, was prepared to defy them. And so what began as concern slowly transformed into determination. If Quan would not step away from the relationship, then they would have to intervene themselves. A plan quietly formed in their minds. They would meet Tieu Lac face to face. They would make her understand the gap between their world and theirs. They believed that once confronted with reality, and perhaps given the right incentive, she would willingly step aside. After all, what could a poor orphan girl possibly do when faced with the power and wealth of a corporate empire? What they did not yet know was that the quiet girl in the countryside possessed a strength far greater than money, the strength of loving someone with her whole heart. Late one quiet afternoon, when the sun was lowering itself gently over the wide green fields, a sleek black luxury car rolled slowly down the dusty road leading to Tieu Lac's small farm. The contrast was almost surreal. The polished surface of the vehicle reflected the golden light of the countryside, standing out sharply against the simple wooden fences and rows of vegetables stretching toward the horizon. Tieu Lac, dressed in a faded blue shirt and worn straw hat, was kneeling by the tomato plants, carefully tying their stems to thin bamboo stakes. She did not notice the car at first, not until the engine stopped and two elegantly dressed figures stepped out. Quan's parents surveyed the farm with controlled expressions. The scent of soil, the soft clucking of chickens, and the breeze rustling through the cornfields were far removed from the marble floors and climate-controlled air of their mansion. Yet they carried themselves with the same composed authority, as though even this humble land must yield to their presence. Tieu Lac quickly stood up, wiping her hands on her trousers. Though surprised, she greeted them politely and invited them into her small wooden house. Inside, everything was simple but tidy. A wooden table, neatly arranged teacups, a shelf filled with farming books, and a framed photo of her and Quan smiling under the open sky. That photo did not go unnoticed. After a brief exchange of formalities, Quan's mother placed a medium-sized leather suitcase on the table. The soft click of the lock opening echoed louder than it should have in the quiet room. Inside, stacks of neatly bundled cash filled the case, 500 million dong, arranged with clinical precision. "We did not come here to humiliate you," her mother began, her voice smooth yet distant. "We understand that you may care about our son, but you must also understand that you and Quan belong to two very different worlds." Her father added calmly, "This money is not a bribe. Think of it as compensation, a way to help you start a better life elsewhere." Tieu Lac felt her heartbeat pound in her ears. 500 million dong. It was more money than she had ever seen in her life. With that amount, she could repair the aging roof, expand the farm, buy better equipment, even ensure financial security for years to come. The temptation was not imaginary. It was heavy, real, and sitting right in front of her. But as she stared at the money, her thoughts drifted to Quan. She remembered the way he would roll up his expensive sleeves without hesitation to help her harvest vegetables. She remembered how he had once burned his hand trying to cook for her in her tiny kitchen, yet laughed it off as if it were nothing. She remembered the quiet evenings when he would sit beside her under the starlit sky, speaking not as a CEO, but as a man who longed for peace and sincerity. "You are a smart girl," his father continued, misinterpreting her silence. "You must know that love alone is not enough. Our family's reputation, our company's stability, these are not small matters. If you truly care for Quan, you will not become an obstacle in his future." The words stung more than the offer itself. an obstacle, a burden, something to be removed. Tieu Lac slowly closed the suitcase. Her fingers trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady when she pushed it back across the table. I know I am poor. I know I do not have a family name that can stand beside yours, but I have never loved Quan for his money or his position. Her voice grew firmer. If he chooses to leave me one day because he no longer loves me, I will accept it, but I cannot leave him because of money. That would mean everything between us was for sale, and it is not. The room fell silent. Outside, the wind carried the scent of ripe crops through the open window. Quan's parents had expected tears, hesitation, perhaps even gratitude. They had not expected refusal. In that modest wooden house, surrounded by nothing but honesty and earth, a girl with no wealth had just rejected a fortune, not out of pride, but out of love. The silence inside the small wooden house grew heavy after Tieu Lac pushed the suitcase back across the table. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, casting long, golden shadows on the floor, as if time itself had paused to witness the moment. Quan's parents stared at the young woman before them, trying to reconcile the image they have formed in their minds with the reality sitting across from them. This was not a greedy girl dazzled by wealth, nor was she trembling in fear. She looked fragile, yes, her clothes simple, her hands rough from years of farm work, but there was a quiet dignity in the way she held herself. Quan's father was the first to break the silence. "Do you understand what you are refusing?" he asked, his tone no longer smooth but edged with restrained frustration. "This amount of money could change your life. You would never have to struggle here again." Tieu Lac lowered her gaze briefly, not in submission but in thought. Of course she understood. She understood every cracked tile on her floor, every sleepless night calculating seasonal harvest profits, every time she had chosen to repair tools instead of buying new ones. She understood struggle intimately. Yet she also understood something deeper, the warmth she felt when Quan smiled at her, as though she were the most precious person in his world. "I have struggled my whole life," she replied gently, "but I have never sold my heart to make it easier." Her words were not loud, but they carried weight. Quan's mother studied her carefully now, noticing the way the girl's hands, though trembling slightly, never retreated from the table. There was fear there, of course there was. Tieu Lac was not naive. She knew opposing powerful people could bring consequences, but there was also unwavering resolve. "You think love is enough?" his mother asked quietly. Tieu Lac lifted her eyes, and for the first time, there was a faint shine of emotion in them. "I don't know if love is enough to overcome everything," she admitted honestly, "but I know that without love, nothing else has meaning." She continued, her voice steadier now. "Quan never once made me feel small. He never treated this farm like something shameful. When he is here, he is not a CEO. He is just Quan. If I leave him because of money, I would be proving that I never believed in him or in myself." The wind outside grew stronger, brushing against the wooden walls. In that simple house, the gap between wealth and poverty seemed smaller than ever. Quan's father felt an unfamiliar hesitation stir within him. He had built his empire through negotiation, strategy, and calculated decisions. Every problem had a solution, every obstacle a price. Yet this girl had just presented something he could not calculate. "We will not approve of this relationship," he said finally, though the certainty in his voice was no longer absolute. "You should prepare yourself. The road ahead will not be easy." Tieu Lac nodded respectfully. "I know, but I would rather walk a difficult road with honesty than an easy road with regret." When Quan's parents stood to leave, the suitcase remained unopened on the table. The air outside felt cooler now as they stepped back into their car. Through the window, they saw Tieu Lac standing by the doorway, small against the vast fields behind her, yet somehow unshaken. As the car drove away, dust rising behind it, Tieu Lac let out the breath she had been holding. Her knees felt weak, and for a brief moment, tears threatened to fall. She was afraid of what might come next, of the pressure that could fall upon Quan because of her. But beneath that fear was clarity. She had chosen love freely, not out of desperation, not out of ambition. Standing alone in the fading light, she whispered softly to herself that no matter what storms awaited them, she would not be the one to betray their truth. And in that quiet countryside evening, a girl with nothing but sincerity proved that her heart was stronger than any fortune.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Ní Tieu Lạc Review. Vậy là câu chuyện của chúng ta đã kết thúc tại đây. Trong câu chuyện của chúng ta ngày hôm nay đã kể về nội dung đó chính là việc bố mẹ của vị CEO trẻ đã đến lông trại của Tieu Lạc và CEO. Hai người đã đến và gặp Tieu Lạc để yêu cầu cô phải rời xa vị CEO. Thậm chí hai ông bà, bố mẹ của CEO đã đưa cho Tieu Lạc một số tiền lớn, đó chính là 500 triệu đồng để cô dùng số tiền đó trang trải cuộc sống và tránh xa con trai của họ. Nhưng Tieu Lạc không nhận số tiền đó và vẫn quyết tâm sẽ bảo vệ tình yêu của mình với CEO đến cùng. Mọi tình tiết hấp dẫn về câu chuyện của Tieu Lạc và CEO đứng trước sự phản đối của gia đình CEO sẽ còn được kể ở các video tiếp theo. Các bạn đừng quên bấm vào nút đăng ký kênh sẽ nhận được thông báo mới nhất về các câu chuyện sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày trên kênh Lý Tieu Lạc Review nha. Nếu các bạn thấy video hay hấp dẫn, hãy cho mình xin nút like, share và để lại bình luận góp ý ở dưới video. Mọi ý kiến đóng góp của các bạn sẽ được mình ghi nhận và cải thiện nội dung trên kênh hay hơn nữa để phục vụ khán giả. Và đặc biệt cũng đừng quên bấm vào giỏ hàng được đính kèm trên video để mua các sản phẩm phù hợp với bản thân và gia đình để ủng hộ Tieu Lạc nha. Bye bye!